Okay, Matt, I've got you unmuted now. But when you start talking, I'll go ahead and mute you again so we don't get a little rowdy over here. So we'll do all Q&A at the end. And without further ado, Matt.
Hey everybody, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, you don't need to mute everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, a little rowdy is okay, but and if anybody needs to jump in at some point, please do. I've got a not a terribly long presentation tonight, and then we can have a Q&A afterwards. But I want to thank you first for having me come join you remotely. I looked up your weather. It's about 36 there right now, and you had a little wind. I heard today. I hope you were able to get out and do some good hawking. It's about 72 degrees here, and so you can see we got a fire going in Louisiana. That's legit here for winter.
Thank you for saying
that. All right, so tonight I want to talk about the 4 falconry fundamentals, which is sort of my formulation of what makes falconry work, and really the key component of everybody's falconry, weight management. Not that that falconry starts or ends with weight management, but I think we'll find out through this presentation that everybody does some form of weight management, and so really you're really just deciding whether to do it well or to do it not as well, and we might as well do it as well as we can. So I'm going to talk a little bit about weight management basics, which is sort of how to do it. And why we do it, but first I want to sort of dispel a couple of misconceptions. One, that that it's that using the scale, that weight management itself is very complicated, that there's a lot of math involved to do it right. There's a lot of charts and graphs. There is all of that if you're a nerd like me and you like to look at that kind of stuff. But in principle, it's very simple. And it can be broken down into a couple of sort of easy to remember pieces that you can sort of learn by heart and not have to do any higher level math. But there is a little bit of math. The second misconception is, let's see, can we get this thing started? There we go. Okay, so is weight management going to make you a slave to the scale? That's something I hear quite a bit if I go to field meets, or I'm talking to any group of falconers that sort of feel all kind of ways about whether you should spend a lot of time worrying about what your bird weighs, and whether or not you can spend too much time worrying about it. And one, I think, legitimate concern people have is that it's somehow going to make your falconry reducible to whatever the bird weighs, and that somehow this is going to take a lot out of your falconry, or reduce the complexity of the relationship that you have with the bird, and more or less make you a slave to the scale. And what I'd like to convince you all of tonight is that it's not about being a slave to the scale. It's about mastering the scale. It's just about figuring out that this is a tool, one of the many tools that you have in order to know whether it's a good time to fly, to know, whether it's a good time to enter your bird, to have any sort of idea of what the bird might expect, how it might expect to perform, and for general health and wellness, just being able to more accurately predict what your bird will weigh from day to day. This is, it's not rocket science, and it's not going to fundamentally change your falconry, except, I think, for the better. So tonight's topics, just briefly, I'm going to introduce weight management as a topic, as an idea. We're going to talk about 3 elements of weight management, which are really, from this perspective, the only 3 that there are. We're going to learn how to make it work. So we're going to go through the whole process with with an imaginary bird, which is the bird that I've got right now. And then we can have a Q&A at the end. In terms of introduction, I want to talk about Harry McElroy, who so people have been managing their hawks' weights, either accurately or inaccurately, precisely or estimating for probably, thousands of years, one way or another. In our time, Harry McElroy was the first to spell out sort of specifically what it means to use a gram scale, and specifically what it means to have a bird that comes up to a certain weight every night and then hunts at a certain weight the next day, and that there's some relation between one and the other, and some way to predict how much you need to feed it and predict accurately what it's going to weigh at hunting time tomorrow. So Harry McElroy really deserves the the accolades for what he called the 22-hour weight control system. And he was writing about it in the late 60s and early 70s. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about what weight management is, just to give us a definition. Where does it fit into falconry? Where does it fit into the 4 falconry fundamentals, which is sort of my formulation, but also where does it fit in generally to everybody's falconry? And like, when do we think about it? What and how quickly does it come up? And then why do we manage the weight at all? And the question of whether or not you should manage the weight of your bird is, for some of us, like, we would never ask that question because the answer seems to be so obvious. But a lot of well-meaning and also successful falconers ask the honest question, why manage the weight? So I want to try to address that as well in the introduction. All right, so first, Harry McElroy. This is Harry and his wife Beth on a trip I made out there to Arizona a couple of years ago, and I've had the pleasure of hunting with Harry twice, out in person once on one of his horses, which was a big thrill, and we caught rabbits and quail and just had exactly the same experience that you would imagine you might have if you read any of his books. Harry's known, for those who don't know him or know of him, known for the Desert Hawking series, which is currently 4 books, probably will stay that way. But it started with Desert Hawking 2, which is still in print now thanks to Western Sporting Publications, is pretty close to the original formulation. Harry's exposition of how to fly Cooper's hawks and Harris hawks essentially in the desert, mostly at quail, and that's kind of his falconry. And in pursuit of that kind of falconry, he and his cohort of falconer friends at the time developed this 22-hour weight management. And so we're going to talk about what that is and how it works. So the benefits of 22-hour weight management that he recognized early on are the same ones that I recognize today, and that everybody who uses a system or something like this system can easily count. And if you had to write them down, I would say there are 3 basic benefits of this. If you use 22-hour weight management, you're able to accurately predict a future weight at a specific time. So imagine you all have put your birds to bed for the night. What they weigh if you weighed them, after you got back from the field or before you came in for dinner, and what will they weigh at hunting time tomorrow, whatever hunting time that happens to be for you. So, can you accurately predict a future weight at a specific time? Number 2, can you maintain hunting birds within optimal daily range? So every day, if you have an idea of what your optimal range is, for sort of peak performance, or if it's a little high, maybe less than peak, but still acceptable. If it's a little low, maybe a little over the top, but still acceptable. Whatever the range is, if you want to get it back there every single day during the season, this is a method for doing that. And finally, to raise or lower a hawk's weight in small controlled increments. And Harry's rule of thumb is 1% of the bird's body weight per day. So if you have a kestrel and it flies at 100 grams, 1% is 1 gram. So if you were going to raise the weight over time, you would raise it at 1% per day. So estimating every single day what, you know, what 100% of its weight is as it comes up, only raising it or lowering it in 1% increments. And this is really just a rule of thumb that has to do with allowing the bird enough time to change its metabolism to safely adapt to whatever change you have in mind. So it's a good forward-thinking process, and this too is one of the benefits of the system. I wanted to read you a little quote from Desert Hawking, and this was, you know, again written early in the 70s when this was, you know, fairly new construction and a new idea for falconers. And he says the most important finding when they were developing 22-hour weight management was in discovering that by using this method, we're able to control weight more accurately than previously. So without 22-hour weight management, they had less control. We were able to all but dismiss the human error factor in the highly critical area of weight control. So essentially, they've come up with a system that allows them to take out the guesswork, to take out the, you know, obvious human error that inserts itself every day as we sort of incorrectly estimate where we are in the process. Finally, he says, I feel that this method will result in a marked reduction in health problems in the Cooper's hawk and in other delicate hawks, and I can certainly affirm that in my own experience. Mostly I fly small birds, with the exception of male Harris hawks, which I kind of think of as the largest of the small hawks. But everything, you know, essentially smaller than a male Harris hawk is going to benefit from and really require for peak performance this amount of you know, predictive ability and control of the weight from day to day. So so all props to Harry. Can everybody hear me okay? Are we Ray? Okay, fantastic. Thank you much. All right, so first question in this introduction, what is weight management? What do I mean by it? So two broad definitions here, two approaches to weight management. Probably you do one or the other or some combination of both, everybody in the room. So so the first definition that I would like to forward as my definitions, what I think is the right approach. It's precise daily measuring of a bird's food intake to change or maintain its body mass over time. And I wanted to sort of highlight, you know, each of these words. Precise, meaning we know gram for gram what's going in. Daily measuring, meaning we're weighing at least once a day, you know, often more than that. The food intake. So you're either weighing the food or you're weighing the bird before and after feeding, so you know how much food is going into it. And the reason why you're doing it, the whole purpose is to change or maintain the bird's body mass over time. You either want to raise the weight on a daily basis or lower it. So weight management from this perspective is a precise process of measuring food amounts or the bird's weight in order to change, raise or lower its weight. The more loose approach and definition would, which really requires us to admit that we do weight management whether we want to or not, and it's any change in the feeding routine. So, for example, you know, the bird was high today, so I'm going to give it half its ration tomorrow. If I feed it a quail a day, I'm going to give it half a quail. I'm going to skip a day feeding because the bird's, you know, been up in weight for a couple of days, and I know it can take it, and it'll probably perform better later. So any change of feeding routine, whether you measure it or not, meant to affect the behavior or the health of the bird. So between these two definitions, clearly I prefer the first, and I want to you know, through these slides, give you a little bit idea why I feel strongly about this, and what good I think it can do you if you are able to produce this same effect. All right, so here we're getting into a little bit of graphs. And what I want to show you here is sort of the difference between these two approaches to weight management broadly. This would be an example of sort of the second approach, which is, I think, you know, fairly common approach to managing a bird's weight, especially with an experienced bird. I tend to think of, you know, large long wings being flown this way typically. And what this graph shows you here on the x-axis, which is the which is the stand-up axis, that's the whole range of the bird's weight. So from low weight, whatever that is, to sort of its mid-range, to a maximum weight. And the max weight would be the maximum weight you expect it to come back to you when you called it, or the maximum practical weight that you would fly the bird. So imagine this graph indicates the entire range of a bird's, practical weight. On the y-axis, it's, basically 9 days of hawking. And I tried to fit in 10 days of hawking, but I estimated it wrong. So we got 9 days of hawking that we're looking at. The red line is essentially the weight. Okay, so you can see this is fairly hypothetical. There are no actual numbers associated with this, but I'll show you how this works. So let's say we caught a bird, on the second morning, and we caught it at a weight for the hawk that was somewhere between its low range and its mid range, which is probably, if we think about, where we fly our hawks, if we went out this morning and we were in this range with our hawks, we would feel pretty confident that the bird would respond to a slip, that it would come back when it was called. This is the weight at which you kind of know, the business is going to happen. And sure enough, this bird caught, looks like a partridge to me, or quail. And we got so excited, we just kind of let it eat about half of it. And maybe a little bit more than we intended to, but it was a great flight, and it was a beautiful spot, and we had 3 of our favorite people with us, and so we went ahead and let her feed up some. Consequently, it was day 4 before we could fly again. So you know how this works. It's a little bit of the hangover of the weight. Went out again on day 4, got some slips, kind of the same weight, but did not catch. And was that the weight? We don't know. We could have been the nature of the slip, or the nature of the weather, or the hawk, or what have you. But we responded that by being a little confused that we were at the same weight and didn't catch. So, well, I'm gonna get them a little sharper for tomorrow. So only gonna let her have 10, 15 grams, and then we're gonna try again the next day. Next day, what happens is we don't catch again. Now we're worried a little bit that maybe we got it too low, so we bring it up, and sure enough, we bring it up, we catch something again. Now we're so happy that we caught something, we just go ahead and let her eat the whole thing, and then call her back up for a couple extra chicks, and consequently, you can see the rest of the graph. We're not flying again until about day 10. Okay, so this is what I would call sort of laissez-faire weight management, which is sort of not to disparage it, but we're sort of making it up as we go along. We're sort of responding day to day to what we think the bird might do, and we are experimenting, but we really don't know where we're going to end up from day to day. And I think that honestly, a lot of falconers, if they were to graph their success versus their weight over the course of any period in their falconry season, it would look something like this. So let's compare that to some actual data from this season. So this is not a hypothetical bird. This is a kestrel I'm flying right now from this year, a 9-day period in which I was able to fly her every day just because I was on the road, and it was hawking time for me, and I had no other work to do, etc. And you can see from this graph here a couple of different things. So the bird stays mostly in the mid-range. This is a bird that's managed on 22-hour weight control. This is a bird that finds itself at every day well within the mid-range, and when it hunts, it's hunting fairly close to what its optimal weight would be. There's some variability there. So this graph is actually from actual data. So these represent real numbers of a real 9 days. Why we caught on every day except for those 2, which is similar. So we in the hypothetical example, we blanked twice. But in this example, we had way more opportunities in that 9 days to hunt. And that's a key point that I want you to take home, that one of the values of sort of precise management of the bird's weight is that it gives you more opportunities to hunt. There are no, throwaway days. You can literally have your bird ready to hunt virtually every day during the season. And that's what this graph represents. And in this case, these are starlings that were caught on these days. And an extra, bit of data here. This is the this is the through line of the weight, and it stays fairly, so the average, weight on this period of 9 days came up a little bit, which you would expect from several days of successful hunting. I, like everybody else in the room, likes to, feed my bird. I love to watch them eat. If they had a good flight, I try not to, but I end up feeding them a little bit more. So typically the weight comes up if you have several days of success. But also several days of success tends to make the bird fly better anyway. But you can see the difference here between the wide variability over the course of, low to max weight range, and the very narrow, very predictable system here. So this is, I'm claiming for you guys, one of the main benefits to me of this system. Okay, so where does weight management fit within the fundamentals? So the fundamentals are, if you aren't familiar, so it's sort of the way I think about how falconry works. And if you can imagine these four basic concepts sort of working around a clock face, starting with prey base. So everybody's falconry, does not start with the hawk. It starts with what you're hunting. It starts with how many do you have to hunt. Your choice of hunting bird is actually based on what you have to hunt most often, if your goal is to catch game. If your goal is to catch game on a regular basis, you need to start with your prey base as your first consideration. So prey base, husbandry, and well, to stay on prey base just for a second, the components of the prey base are exactly what you might think. Is it an abundant prey base? How abundant is it? Is it suitable? Is it the kind of prey that a hawk would catch, that particular hawk would catch in the wild? Is it at home? Is it wild game as opposed to, to bag game, for example? Is it accessible? Is this you have access to the land? Husbandry, huge subject, but you don't have to be a veterinarian, in other words, to fly a hawk. You take care of the feathers, the feet, the food, the furniture. Those are the four components of husbandry that really have the most to do with whether you catch game or not. Recall is about training. Does it come back to you, essentially? And slip management, this idea of, do you know how to hunt? Are you familiar enough with how hawks work, with how quarry escapes, with how cover affects the quarry and the slip, in order to engineer a good slip? And so between these four main concerns, you can see that there are other concerns. Between prey base and husbandry is your choice of hawk. Between husbandry and recall is sort of where weight management falls in. And so in my view, weight management begins, once you have the hawk in hand. Once you have trapped the hawk, that's when weight management begins. And it becomes a key component of manning and training. So weight management is what takes you from husbandry to recall, informs your slip management. It's going to inform your success. But this is where, in my view, weight management comes into the fundamentals. And more generally, where does weight management fit into your daily practice? So I wanted to share a couple of these real simple graphs here. This is explaining an idea that I've heard at many field meets. It has it makes a lot of sense to me, and maybe one of you has said it to another one today, and that is, like if you're speaking to a younger falconer says, hey, look, I don't know if my hawk's going to do well today. I've driven it 4 hours across the state, and it's kind of a different territory. And an experienced falconer, may say, look, what you're dealing with is the weight, the place, and the time of day. Like, those are your three main variables, say. And if you have two of those, this is the pick two theory. If the weight is right and the place is right, your normal place that you like to hunt, then the time of day doesn't really matter that much. And if the place is the right place and the time of day is right, then weight doesn't really matter that much. And so this is, I think there's a lot of common sense involved in this. I think the actual fact of it is a little bit more complicated, and I'll show you that. But this would be one way to think about where weight management fits into your daily practice and how it affects the chance that you're going to succeed. And in this formulation, it's about the same, it's about the same weight as place and time, that these, you know, are influential concepts for a hawk. So, so for me, I think it's pick 4, not pick 2. I think that we should add quarry and slip to this graph. We should say, hey, look, if it's the right slip, you know, a bird you know, it sort of outweighs some of the other factors. And if it's the bird's favorite quarry, it's always going to chase that quarry. You're in pretty good shape there. But you can see in this formulation, my view, weight still outweighs, you know, all but 4. The only way to outweigh, you know, the weight, if your weight is not right, you better have the right slip, you know, at the right quarry, at the right place. Everything else has got to be going in your favor. That's how important weight management is. So weight management, in this view, one of several factors to consider in assessing a hawk's readiness to hunt and chances of a success, but it is the important one. So this is my this is my take on the pick 2 theory. Mine's a pick 4, and you can see weight is really the most important factor. All right, so why do we do weight management? It's really an excellent question, and I think there's 2 reasons. There's field performance and there's predictability, and so I want to talk about field performance really quickly here. And this graph is really the best graph I can think of to show you why we do 22-hour weight management and why we think it's so important. And what this graph shows you is it's got 2 lines here. The orange line are the number of kills this kestrel has made against the weight range, which is the blue line. So if you can see on the left side of the graph, the lowest she's ever caught anything was 91 grams. And on the right side of the graph, the highest she's ever caught is 108 grams, which is, if you've flown any kind of small hawk, you'll recognize that's a pretty wide range for a little bird. But if you, and so you would think, well, wow, this is a great bird. It flies at this huge range, but you can see that it's actually catching within a much more narrow range of that total range. And this really gets you the clue that we're looking for. So what you see here is what we call a normal curve. It's a clustering of where the bird is most likely to catch game. So, you know, 17 head at 99 grams, 10 head at 100 grams, 14 head at 101, and then it drops down significantly as the bird's weight goes up, and it drops down significantly as the bird's weight goes down. So this tells you that with this particular bird, and my claim is, in my experience over 40 years, is that most birds, if you were to graph out their weights and their kills, it would show you some sort of normal curve, some sort of bell curve like this. And it would give you sort of a graphic way to confirm what you really think of as the bird's, you know, sort of weight range. Now we can talk about how the weight range changes over time, over year to year, and even over the course of 1 year as it gets colder, as the bird's, you know, musculature improves, et cetera. But on any given month, any given week, you're going to be looking at a clustering like this. In this case, for this particular bird, it's 98 grams to 101 grams. That's just a 3-gram range for optimal performance, and it's only 18% of the bird's total range. So you can see here that it's a relatively small, you know, subset of weights that the bird really can be expected to exceed. And here you can see that 53% of what this bird caught during this sample of 77 kills, 53% was caught within 18% of the bird's range. So, you know, 23%, you know, if flown higher, 23% if flown lower. But if you look at this graph and I were to give you this bird, my expectation is that you would keep this bird within the 98 to 101 grams, just knowing what you see in this graph here. I would suggest to you that every bird that's owned by everybody in this room could be graphed in this way in a meaningful, you know, useful to you information. So, so I give that to you. Predictability, you know, another one of the great reasons why we do weight management. So, this little formulation here happens to show this year, this kestrel that I'm flying, when she was at molt weight and coming down to hunting weight. So if you take a bird from the chamber or from the perch where you've molted it and the bird's high in weight, and you know that that it's going to take you a little while to get its weight down, and if you follow Harry McElroy's formula of 1% per day, you actually can chart that. You don't even need to know anything else except you would know what 1% is. You can do the math on that. And 1% per day from 118 grams to 104 grams, which is where I wanted to start her this season, would take 17 days. So on the y-axis, you've got 17 days. On the x-axis, you've got the weight there. So this is just without doing anything else except the basic calculation of what 1% of each weight per day is and how long it'll take you to get to hunting weight. This is a kestrel that I knew was going to take about 17 days if I did this right. So the question is, how do you do that? How do you, like, how much do you feed them every day? How do you factor in all the factors? How do you replicate this? Is it even possible? And it's possible. Okay, so this is the actual drop from the same bird and it happened to take 17 days. And we went from 118 to 104.5. So we were off by, a few tenths of a gram at the end of 17 days. And that was through the 22-hour weight management system. So what I'm suggesting to you is that now there is really no mystery in dropping the weight. So you trap a kestrel or you trap a red tail, and you have a target of where you think it might be, or better yet, it's a bird that that's an intermute bird that where its best response weight is, and you happen to know where it is in early August before you pulled the weight down. Well, you can estimate how long it would take to take it down, 1% per day, and with 22-hour weight control, you can actually achieve that. And so here we did that. This was actual numbers from earlier this year. So pretty close, 118.1 to 104.2 to 118 to 104.5. All right, so now we'll get into how to do that. One of the ways that I've got to sort of teach my own apprentices how to do it, and it's really an illustration of kind of the way I think about 22-hour weight management. And it's this graph that looks kind of like a nautilus shell, like a spiral. And I want to point out a couple of the components to this illustration here. One, you can see it's a clock face. All right, it's got all the hours of the day, and that should give you a clue that that weight management under the 22-hour system is a daily practice. Okay, so it does matter what time of day it is, and it can be replicated every single day. So the first thing that you want to know is that the bird is always dropping weight, and so it's going to continue to drop weight, and these components sort of illustrate this process. So let's move forward here. So 3 elements. So this we talked earlier in the table of contents about this portion of the conversation, and that's just that weight management, while it may seem complicated, really just requires that we know 3 things about the bird. Okay, we need to know what the target weight is. What weight are you trying to get at tomorrow at hunting time? Okay, if the bird is experienced and well made, as it might be this time of year, and you're an experienced falconer and you know this bird well, you probably know what weight that is and what time you're going to hunt. So just to interject here, 22 hours. The reason why it's 22 hours and not 24 hours, and this is per Harry, he just estimated that his hunting would take 2 hours. So he knew that he wanted to be at hunting weight at a certain time. And so here we've illustrated this target weight at hawking time. That's the first thing that we wanted to know. He figured about half an hour to the field, about an hour's worth of hunting and half an hour back. So he's not going to feed the hawk its daily ration until he gets back, and that's 2 hours later. So the rest of the time, those 22 hours, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're trying to figure out, how much to feed it and how fast it's going to lose weight so that we can get back reliably the next day to the target weight. So this is feeding time. Okay, so 2 hours later, after we've caught something in the field and given it a tidbit and brought it home, you should notice here, we're not feeding the bird up in the field. because first of all, the bird will eat more than it needs to get it back to hunting weight the next day. We know that already. And unless you carry a scale in the field and you feed it up, you don't know how many grams you're giving it. So you're losing that accuracy. And then here's the third aspect of it, the rate of weight loss over time. So this gray area here represents the bird sort of losing weight. Imagine this gray area is the mass of the bird. And at 1 hour, it weighs about the same that it did at feeding time. At 2 hours, it's coming down a little bit more. At 6 hours, it's coming down more. 12 hours later, it's down considerably, maybe about almost half to where it needs to be. And it starts to speed up a little bit, but essentially what this graph is trying to indicate is that over time, from those 22 hours, from feeding time to hunting time, you're going to be right back to where you wanted to be at hawking time. Okay, so this is the basis of my weight management concept card, which I'll show you at the end. It's essentially a little handheld device that allows you to that helps you calculate this for yourself and helps you teach your apprentice how this process works. But these are the three elements: target weight, fed weight, and the rate of weight loss. Okay, those are the only three things you need to know to make 22-hour weight management work. And again, the reason why we're going through this trouble is that we want to have the benefits to our falconry that we think this system gives us. All right, so this is where the math kicks in, and it's not terrible math. If you want to follow along, everybody's phone's got a calculator on it, and would invite you to poke around on that or write down on a napkin if you want. But we're gonna make this work here. We're gonna calculate the grams lost per hour, which is really the key variable here that we need to know, because if you don't know how fast they're losing weight, you don't know how many grams they're going to lose between now and hunting time. And so if you're trying to predict what the hunting weight will be at hunting time, you need to know the rate of weight loss. So this is how we get it. Okay, so we measure the weight at intervals after a meal. So you're feeding the bird, you weigh the bird after the meal, and you write that down. Okay, so we're measuring the weight. And then we're going to do that at intervals around the clock. Now, do I do this? Do I get up at 12 a.m. And weigh my bird? No, I don't. Well, I don't have to anymore. So if I trap a new bird, I may, if I want to give myself a little bit more accuracy, I may weigh it every few hours just to get in my head, what direction we're going. Although I've got a pretty good idea for kestrels, for Harris hawks, for merlins, for red tails. I've got a pretty good idea of what they're going to burn per hour just from experience. So the first thing we do is we measure the weight at intervals after a meal. Then we subtract the current weight from the previous weight. So we're just trying to figure out how many grams did it drop between one time and another time. And three, we're going to divide the number of hours between measurements. So this is where we factor in how long did it take for them to drop those 2 or 3 grams or 20 or 30 grams. And then we're going to divide that evenly by the number of hours it took them to do that. And that's what gives us the rate of weight loss that we're looking for. And we'll show you how this works here. So I'm going to leave these sort of three steps up in the upper left-hand corner so you can see. And this is an example of the kestrel that I have now, Coco. And you can see at 6 p.m. after the hunt, her fed weight is 111 grams. So I feed her up to 111 grams. And I know this already. So you'll see how I know how much to feed her when we're through with this process. But if I were to go wake her up at 12 midnight and weigh her, let's just say she would weigh 108 and a half grams, thereabouts. Okay, so 111 grams at 6 p.m., 108.6 at midnight. 111 minus 108.6 is 2.4 grams dropped. So in that time, from 6 p.m. to midnight, she's dropped 2.4 grams. That 2.4 grams divided by 6 hours is 0.4 grams per hour. That is a rate of weight loss. Okay, that's useful information now that we can use to predict where we're going and where this bird's going to be in the future. Okay, so the rest of this working around the clock is kind of similar, but let's go through it. So this is the next measurement. This is going to be about 6 a.m. the bird weighs 106. So from midnight to 6 a.m. drops 2.5 grams or 2.4 grams. That's another 6 hours. That's another 0.4 grams loss. So now we got a pretty good idea that overnight, she's losing an average of about 0.5 gram an hour, a little bit less than 0.5 gram an hour. Okay, this is very useful information for us. Now we're going to keep carrying it around. We're going to go to noon the next day. And now you see we've dropped a little bit more than we might expect. And that's, so this should be familiar to most falconers here, that birds will drop more weight during the daytime when they're active and awake than they will at night when they're asleep and inactive. This is same with you. The more you move around, the more alert you are, the more you're dropping weight, and the less you do at night when you're asleep or sitting in the easy chair. So here we are on the next 6 hour period. We've lost 3.4 grams. So we're actually kicking up a little bit. And now we're at over 0.5 gram an hour for this period. And to continue it back to hunting time. So now we're at 4 p.m. Now we're at the time when we go hunt the bird, and the bird's right at hunting weight, 100 grams at 4 p.m. That last little bit of 1, 2, 3, 4 hours lost 2.8 grams. That's the highest right now. So now it's 0.7 grams. So you can see we've measured, and we are now aware over 22 hours at any given point, when they're losing weight and how much weight they're losing. This is for anyone who hopes to succeed with a small hawk and really who wants to do better with the larger hawks is going to want to have a good idea about how this process works. Finally, the final part of this is to average it because that's how this daily average works, is that we're taking the nighttime weight loss, which is a little bit lower, and the daytime weight loss, which is a little bit higher, and we're averaging them. So nighttime average plus daytime average equals the 22-hour average. We're going to say over nighttime, that was 0.4 grams per hour. In the daytime, the average was 0.62 grams. And what that gives us over 22 hours is exactly 0.5 gram per hour lost on average over 22 hours. And that figure is something that I noticed, almost 30 years ago, flying the first kestrels I had, that a kestrel at hunting weight drops about 0.5 gram an hour over the course of time when it's not hunting on a daily schedule. So, and this works out fairly well. Interestingly, with Merlins, it's about twice the rate. So Merlins drop about 22 grams in 22 hours. They drop about 1 gram an hour over time. And these, and sort of having an idea of that rate of weight loss is really what helps you, estimate how much to feed. This little circular area here where it says average grams per hour times 22, that is how you know what the fed weight is. So now that we have this average grams lost per hour at 0.5, I know that 22 times 0.5 is 11, which is how I knew to feed the bird up to 111 if I want to fly it at 100 grams. So I hope this makes sense and is making sense. Essentially, it works around the clock. You're finding an average of the grams lost per hour so that you can calculate how much to feed the bird so that it's back to hunting weight the next day. Or if you want to raise the weight a little bit, you feed it, if I want it to be 1 gram heavier, I feed it 1 gram more up front. And that is where you really get an idea of how much precise control you have. And this gives you some insight into how those two graphs early on about the laissez-faire weight management versus the proactive weight management, of how we got to those two different outcomes. Because in the second example, I was able to accurately predict and control the weight at which the bird was going to be the next day, every day for 9 days in a row. Okay, so if you don't want to use a weight management card and a little circular drawing to do this, what I used to do and what many people do is they'll chart this out in an Excel file. And for anybody who's interested, I can send them electronic versions of this as well. This is another presentation of exactly the process that we just went through. It's just doing it in a little bit more of a conventional style. So here we've got the hours 0 to 22. Those are the 22 hours that we're talking about in 22-hour weight management. 0 being the time that you fed up the bird. So in this case, 6 p.m. So that time is 6 p.m. when you fed up the bird, all the way around the clock face to 4 p.m. the next day, which is hunting time, 22 hours later. Now we know the grams lost. And if you were to plug those in, if you were to, just get up every night and every hour and start weighing this bird. Now, my guess is if you did that, you would keep the bird awake and the bird would lose more weight than it would if it was asleep. So I don't recommend that. But what you can see is that overnight it's about 0.4. It kicks up a little bit until you get, the full average over 22 hours. And here's the weight. So 6 p.m., the fed weight 111 grams, and then it's right back to 100 grams plus a little bit the next day. Here's how it would look if you graph that out. You would see that the bird's losing weight over time, and then during the daytime, that weight loss accelerates. So this is an actual, accurate representation through Excel file of what this process looks like. And maybe this makes more sense to you than the circular illustration. But for me, just knowing that it's a daily process that's going to happen around the clock every day is what sort of inspired me to come up with the circular version. Okay, so weight management system benefits. So why have we done all this? We're going to review it real quick. We think that 22-hour weight management using the system that we just outlined, we want it to accurately predict the future weight at a specific time. We think it does that. We want to maintain hunting birds within an optimal daily range, and we think it does that. We want to raise or lower a hawk's weight in small controlled increments, ideally 1% per day. We think it does that, and I will attempt to prove it with just highlighting different parts of what we've seen. So, for example, from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m., 11 hours, if I wanted to know from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next morning what that bird will weigh, I do know this. I can accurately predict this. I do this all the time. I do it almost every night, just in my head now. But I know it's going to be about 0.4 grams per hour overnight. So I can do the math and I can see that the bird's going to be about 106.5 grams at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. the next morning. Okay, so to accurately predict a weight at a specific time in the future, we've done that. We've proven that. Number two, we want to maintain hunting birds within a daily optimal range. And so this graph here, I hope illustrates this. And what I would like to point out here is sort of x-axis is the weight of the bird. The three lines represent, so the top line, you can imagine the highest weight that the bird is per day. That's the fed weight. The PM weight, the flight weight, that's going to be the lowest weight that you have the bird at any given time. That's when you go fly. And then the first AM weight. So when you wake up in the morning, you throw the bird on the scale, it's heavier than it's going to be at hunting time. So you have that sort of mid-range weight there. And you can see this actual graph is from a bird that was trapped at about 117 grams. And then once you've had it for a week or 2 weeks, that weight management starts to normalize and you start to get a good, accurate idea of how to predict this. And what you've got here is a normal range now. So you can see every day you've pretty much got the fed weight right. You've got everything's starting to flatten out. So I would point out the difference between the left side of this graph and the right side of the graph. And I would suggest to you that moving forward from this date, last date of March 8th, 2020 to the end of that season, it looked pretty much like that, with everything normalized. So to maintain a bird within a normal daily range between 97 and 111 grams, that we have done, that's what this graph proves. Finally, to raise or lower a weight in small controlled increments, ideally 1% per day. So this is another similar graph to one we showed earlier of just dropping the weight to hunting weight. This is a little bit further along in the process. This is molt weight to the weight at the first kill. And so there's no actual weight numbers here. We're just going to represent molt weight as 100% of that bird. So like it's maximum weight, the weight at which, essentially I was just feeding it whatever she wanted to eat during the day. That was 100%. I know I wanted to drop her at about 1% per day. And until we caught something, you can see that she was about 76% of her 100% weight. So the 100% weight might have been 130, and she was 76% of 130 when she caught her first head. And if you look at what this means, so from 100% to 76% is 24 percentage points in 26 days, which means we actually did it better than 1% per day. We were right under that. We were 0.9% per day. So is this necessary to be this accurate with the red-tailed hawk or a goshawk or a big old peregrine that that hunts ducks every day? Probably not. Although I would suggest to you that it's useful to be able to do this if you needed to do this. Is it necessary with a small hawk? I would say absolutely yes. It's necessary and beneficial to have this much sort of managerial control over how much of the bird's weight comes down and how long it takes to do that. So here we've done that. We've the third benefit to raise and lower weight in small controlled increments has been proven in this example. Okay, so test time. This is a little quiz, and we won't make it too painful. But I wanted to show you a little bit about how, if you have the three basic components, the hunting weight, the fed weight, and the grams lost per hour, if you know those three things about your weight management, you only need two of them to calculate the third thing. So a male Harris hawk that flies at 625 grams and burns 2.5 grams per hour, the question is, how do you calculate the fed weight? How do we know how much to feed it so that it's back at 625 the next day? So if I'm doing this on my calculator, which I am doing it now, 2.5 grams times 22 hours is 55 grams, okay? And so 55 grams over the hunting weight of 625 is 680. So if I know that this bird reliably burns 2.5 grams an hour and it flies best at 625, or for whatever reason, I want to have it at 625 tomorrow morning, or tomorrow at the same time during the hunt, during hunting time, then I'm going to need to feed it up to 680. And here we go. So fed weight equals 680. That's 625 plus 55 grams. So here we have figured out the fed weight just by knowing what the grams per hour loss is and knowing what weight we want to fly it at. Female Merlin, second example, calculate the grams per hour loss rate. So how do we know this? So we do know that the fed weight is 202. Okay, so I know, or because I'm telling you now, I feed my Merlin up every night after hunting to 202 grams. And you say, well, why, Matt? Why do you do that? Well, that's what gets her back to her hunting weight at 180 grams at 22 hours later at 4 p.m. And you go, oh, okay, so you say, but how do I then figure out what the weight loss is? And so it's 202, the fed weight, minus 180, the hunting weight. That's 22 grams. That's the difference there. And we happen to see a pretty familiar number here. That's 22 grams over 22 hours. Well, what does that suggest? That suggests that it's 1 gram per hour. So for every one of those 22 hours, she's dropping 1 gram on average. And sure enough, the rate of weight loss on this bird is 1 gram per hour. And anybody flying Merlins in the room familiar with that? My guess is your bird probably dropped about 1 gram an hour. That depends a little bit about how much you flew it and what you fed it, et cetera. But there will be some number in that range. And there, again, you have taken 2 of the components and found out the third one. All right, so just sort of wrapping up here, I wanted to put in a quick plug for this product called Falconry Journal. You can find it at falconryjournal.com. You can look it up on your phone right now, and it's an app made by a guy named Tim Williams in California. And the reason why I'm bringing it up in this talk is that this app does everything that I just explained to you how to do in your head or how to do on a little notepad by your scale, sort of the traditional way I've always done it. This app does it for you. Just by taking the inputs, the same inputs that I have been suggesting we should all take, the things that we know, and then it just does the math for you. So this is the home screen on the left. With a little bit of example, showing you that the bird was last weighed 6 hours ago at 100, and it weighed 104 grams. Target weight will be 1 day from now at 12 a.m. Estimated current weight at 0.47 grams per hour. So it's doing all this for you. And I can tell you that it's accurate in my experience, to within a couple of tenths of a gram. You can input the weight of the bird when you take it. It automatically includes the weather, it includes the time of day, it includes the temperature, etc. You can add whatever notes you want. It adds this to sort of a running tally that's right on your phone, which you can share with your sponsor, your apprentice. If you both have the app, you can share birds with each other, so you don't have to swap notes. Their birds show up on your phone and vice versa. Today we caught a starling, February 10th at 10:36 a.m. If I were to click on that starling kill, it would show me the location of the catch. It would show me the weather, wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure, whatever else you wanted to learn. And then it suggests to you, based on the grams lost per hour, how much you need to feed it to have it back to hunting weight the next day. You can download all the data. You don't need to be able to read this, but this is a month's worth of data that's just downloaded from the phone. It goes right into Excel, and you can do neat stuff with it once you're in Excel. So I understand that future versions of this app will do this graphing for you automatically also. But right now I just do it myself because I like to do it. And just for grins, just to sort of go through what these show, this is the end of the season and when I'm starting to feed the bird up. And so you can see, empty weight over time, average daily grams lost per hour in the postseason. And these are all data points that are derived directly from the app that you can just download. The amount fed per day over time. So you can see, maybe this is not super important to your own falconry today, but I guarantee you it will be important if you wanted to remember 3 years from now how much you fed a bird, what the average weight loss, etc. And if you wanted to sort of take your falconry up a notch and see what you could do if you really were able to get the bird to its optimal, maybe to the high side of its optimal, but that weight every single day of the season, and not have to suffer downtimes. Okay, so finally, that QR code takes you to the weight management concept card, which I would be happy to ship to you if you were interested in having it. It comes with the card and with a sheet of paper that explains how to use it, plus a bunch of electronic files I'll send you. And with that, that's the end of my weight management basics presentation. Happy to accept any questions or complaints at this time.
All right, there we go. Now you can kind of see. All right, if anybody has any questions, I would stand up, speak loudly. Yeah, go for it.
Matt, what about weight, temperature?
What about temperature? Okay, so yeah, so temperature does play a part, and where it plays a part is what effect it has on the bird's metabolism. So this is not well known in a scientific sense. Like there is no algorithm that will tell you which bird responds at which weight to which temperature and what the grams per hour loss will be resulting from that. But you can, with your bird in your own experience, estimate that by taking these measurements that I suggested, are parts of the 22-hour weight management system. Broadly speaking, to answer your question, and this should be, fairly commonsensical, cold weather requires that the bird burn more grams. And typically birds can be at a higher weight, will respond at a higher weight, generally if the climate is colder. From day to day, I don't think it makes as much difference from day to day because the birds will, sort of maintain status quo, just like all living animals will do. They try to reach, homeostasis. They want to stay at the same weight, and they will burn more to stay at that weight or burn less to stay at that weight from day to day. Over time, it does have an effect. And in a colder climate, my guess is if you looked at 100 hawks colder climate versus warmer climate, you would find the birds maybe 5 or 10% heavier in the colder climate, the same hawk. Maybe if we had the data from all of the birds that are in the app, for example, amalgamated, you could see that, yeah, same birds taken, for a month, hawking time up north when they're, from North Texas, and take them to Wyoming to hunt sage grouse. Yeah, you're flying them 25, 30 grams heavier. So temperature is one factor. Before anybody asks, I think the same holds true of quality of food. Same holds true of how much exercise the bird gets per day. Those are all factors that affect the grams lost per hour. And so while there's a lot of things that affect the grams lost per hour, as long as you keep those variables steady, like you typically stay in the same temperature range, for example, which is why I keep my small hawks indoors. So at least indoors, they're going to be in 71, 72 degrees all the time. And that's going to, take that variable out of the equation so that I can, more accurately predict and not have to worry about, what effect, wide swings in temperature are having. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just had one thing I wanted to add, if it helps, I don't know. I flew a lot of Merlins, and I noticed that, you're out in the field, you're pretty much doing the same thing every day. So you feed the bird what you think it's supposed to get, and I kind of came to that same conclusion that if in the morning, like let's say you're going to work for 8 hours and you weigh this bird at 7, by 3 o'clock it'd lose 10 grams. And so if the bird was 5 grams short of where you needed it to be after that 8-hour period, you could feed it in the morning, and the metabolism on a Merlin is super high.
Yeah.
So it would be like you just added it in the beginning. And a lot of times that'll keep the bird alive.
Yeah. So my point or comment on that would be, that demonstrates that it demonstrates that the bird burns a predictable amount per hour over time. But my suggestion would be that it's possible not to be surprised that the bird is 5 grams low at any given time in the morning, because if fed to the fed weight, in other words, not fed up in the field, which we're all tempted to do, but just fed, 6 or 8 grams in the field, hooded, taken back home, put on the scale, see what the difference between that weight is and the fed weight, feed it the difference, those number of grams back to, say, 202 grams, which would be the fed weight, then you're not going to have a 5 gram, sort of surprise at 6 in the morning. Now, the bird could be sick. The bird could burn through unexpectedly a lot more because it's fighting an illness, or it could have stayed up all night. Something could have bugged it. If you have it outdoors, maybe it was not sleeping well and burned more than you expected it to. But generally speaking, all else being equal, it's possible to hold any bird to a predictable, weight at any given time of day, so that, and I can tell you, with Merlins, with Kestrels, with any small hawk, you can have it to within a gram, certainly within a gram plus or minus of where you want it 22 hours later. One of the questions with a Merlin is, like, does it really matter? Like, so if you fly the Merlin, in your favorite field, in the bird's favorite field, it's already set up a home range in that field. It's already 3/4 of the way through the season. You probably, it's caching, birds every day and kind of eating all at once, and you're really not monitoring it. And it probably doesn't matter, that would be a situation where, and a lot of Merlin guys will express this sentiment that it doesn't really matter. I feed the bird as much as it wants to eat, and it flies great the next day. And I can tell you that's still weight management. It's letting the bird regulate the weight. But it's still predictable. You could still measure it if you wanted to. You just choose not. They would just choose not to. So with a kestrel, for example, that's really not possible because their metabolism doesn't, it's not on that super high rate. It's about half, even though the bird's not you know, the bird is more than half as big. Its metabolism is lower, and you need to fly them lower in order to catch stuff with them. So, so you got to stay on top of that a little bit more.
I think that's it for us, Matt.
Okay. Well, hey, look, you guys, I appreciate your attention, and hope you had a great day, and hope you have another great day tomorrow, and hope some of this has been useful to you. Y'all good hawking. Take care.
Thanks again, Matt. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.